There was a film that came out last year where they talked about, the crazy origins of the Democratic Party.
Right.
But people don't realize the crazy origins of the Republican Party. Both parties, because Founding Fathers were against parties in general. Right. So the whole concept of parties had nefarious origins all around the table.
Oh, Zion, dear Zion, home of the free.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you by our generous sponsors, Trust Plumbing, Higher Calling Firearms, Mini Zoo Comes to You, American Appliance, Anderson Accounting, and The Editor Lady.
So what we want to do, though, now is to move on to the bulk of the program, Enoch. And there's something going on this weekend that's going on right now, actually started this morning around 10 o'clock, up in Park City.
What's going on in Park City, Ben?
Park City. There's it's the meeting of the State Central Committee
of the Republican
Party. Because during this week, if you hadn't heard, the head of the Republican Party, who's a member of this group called the Buckshot Caucus, who have the Illuminati all-seeing eye. They use the hashtag Utah Illuminati. They have many references to the Bavarian Illuminati. These people that want to promote evil for evil's sake is the head of the Republican Party, and they just announced unilaterally, which a lot of people are claiming is actually against the bylaws of the state party, has unilaterally voted to or moved to end the vote to stop Count My Vote.
Which is completely makes no sense at all. There's no rational reason to even make an excuse to do that.
The court case has already been not settled. The closing arguments have already been made. They're literally just waiting for the judge to rule.
And they're going to pull out while they're waiting.
Which costs you zero money to wait.
It's totally irrational, and it exposes even more, like clear as day, that there's an agenda.
Because they're claiming that it's because the Republican Party believes in fiscal responsibility. Well, it's not costing you anything to just wait. So it's dishonest to claim that that's the reason why they're doing it. They're not doing it that way.
Right.
It's the same people running the Republican Party. People didn't know this because they weren't listening to Defending Utah Radio, that the people that took over the Republican Party earlier this year were members of this Buckshot Caucus, a.k.a. Utah Illuminati. Their words, not ours.
And they already have an established history that they are absolutely anti-caucus and against the grassroots. And so, of course, they're trying to do something to mess up the lawsuit even further and make sure there isn't any kind of hope or win.
And so you've got these two sides. You've got this – Todd Weiler's talked about this. He's an establishment Republican, a part of this whole organization. He says that they're taking back the Republican Party. And then you've got constitutional conservatives that are saying, that are sticking with the party, that they say, we're taking back the party.
They're both taking back the party.
Taking back the party. How can you both take back the party?
Right. Somebody's already got it. Who's going to take it back?
Who's going to take it back? And how do you take it back from what? Who had it first? What group of people started the Republican Party? A lot of people know that the Republican Party wasn't here at the beginning of our country. It's basically it replaced the Whigs. This was like in the beginning of our country. The two major political parties were the Democrats and the Whigs. And then during the mid-1800s, it made a switch over from the Whigs over to the Republicans.
Yeah, and there is some fascinating history about that. There was a film that came out last year where they talked about, the crazy origins of the Democratic Party.
Right.
But people don't realize the crazy origins of the Republican Party. Both parties, because Founding Fathers were against parties in general. Right. So the whole concept of parties had nefarious origins all around the table.
All around the table, exactly. And so if we're focusing on one party over the other having nefarious origins, we're focusing on the wrong problem. And so just kind of going over that history. In the late 1840s and early 1850s, an organization called, alternatively, it was called the American Union of Associations or National Convention of Associations, founded nearly 50 communist communes around the United States.
So this is the background before the creation of the party.
Right.
The background
how
talks
it's
about
switching over
these
from
unions.
the Whigs over to the Republicans.
And there was this movement of these Marxists and these Marxist organizations that were establishing communes
all around the country.
Actual communist communes where people who believed in Marxist principles were living and trying to implement them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the background.
And the people involved in this were people by the name of Horace Greeley, George Ripley, Park Goodwin,
believe it or not,
Godwin, Edward Giles, and Edward Tweedy. And so we have to understand that. So that this group of people, they established a small town that the Republican Party is known to be founded in. It was called the town of Ripon. Okay, and this leadership of the commune was very instrumental in the founding of the Republican Party. So these same people that formed these communes were the people, these communist communes were the people that were behind the establishment of the Republican Party. And so when we come back from the break, we're going to give you some more details. We're going to go back get you more details of the history. This is Defending Utah Radio right here on K-Talk AM 1640. This is Defending Utah Radio. I am Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore from defendingutah.org, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. More of the origins of the Republican Party when we get back after the break.
Defending Utah Radio is the show exposing Utah's tyrants, investigative journalism, and constitutional principles. We have the inside scoop you won't find anywhere else. Defending Utah every Saturday at 1. To learn more or become a member of Defending Utah, visit defendingutah.org. Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. defendingutah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
And welcome back to Defending Utah Radio here on K-Talk AM 1640. And we are talking about the origins of the Republican Party with Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore.
Hello.
Ben, tell us more about the origins of the Republican Party. Before the break, you gave us an introduction about these communist organizations in America in the mid-1800s that were establishing like 50-some communes where people were living in the United States.
Yep.
And out of one of those communes came some influential people who were part of the starting the party.
Started the Republican Party, right. So a group of these people that started these communes, and one of them was in the town of Ripon, and they were the ones behind the foundation of the Republican Party in the 1850s. And the leadership of, and some of them were called radical Republicans, right? And they supposedly controlled Congress during the time of the war between the states. But it wasn't just like this offshoot of the Republican Party. It was the leadership of the Republican Party.
So it was actually a political term at the time,
right?
Among just those involved in politics, where they called the most powerful individuals within the party the radical Republicans,
who are the ones that came through the origins of the communists that formed the Republican Party.
And that's interesting, and that would be a very different meaning of radical Republican than some of the various meanings.
Like today, the media will use that as like an epithet against people that are actual, you want to enforce the Constitution. You're so radical. And so, no, it's completely different. It was actually having a reference to the communist origins of the Republican Party. And the radical leaders of the Republican Congress, such as they called themselves actually the Jacobin Club. They were referred to as the Jacobin Club.
The Jacobin Club. Now, for those of you who don't know, that is an incredibly significant name, the Jacobin Club, because the Jacobins were the success. It's the most well-known name for the successor organization to the original Bavarian Illuminati. So when the original Bavarian Illuminati were around for about 10 years, before they were dissolved. But it was well known that the same individuals involved in that organization had reformed, and they were known. They had the Club of the Jacobins.
The Club of the Jacobins, right?
And there's even documents of George Washington and some of the founding fathers talking about, hey, the Jacobins' mischief is found here in America. I'm paraphrasing my own words, but that's what they were talking about.
And these same individuals, they supported all of the socialist programs of the day, and they were very critical of free market capitalism. And so one of these guys, Greeley, that we mentioned earlier, he traveled to Europe and teamed up with a guy by the name of Robert Owen.
Robert Owen. Wow. Here's another significant name, but you got to know what it is.
Right. So Robert Owen was the partner of a lady by the name of Madame Blavatsky.
So Blavatsky and Robert Owen, they started
the Theosophic Society, which were actually a group of literally Luciferians. Madame Blavatsky called herself, she said she worshipped Satan. And so one of the founders of the Republican Party was partners and worked with closely and helped celebrate, actually was good friends with this guy, Robert Owen, who together started, were literally followers of Satan.
And fascinating that the guy who started the Salt Lake Tribune way back in the day also revered Robert Owen.
Robert
Owen quite a bit as well.
And this also, so that this guy Greeley, he was one of the founders again of the Republican Party, and he, as the owner of a newspaper, he hired who? Karl Marx as his European correspondent. And had him
you
write
could
over.
do that in the mid-1800s since he was still alive and it was an active thing.
Right, exactly. right. And they had him write over 500 articles for his newspaper. And in fact, and so they were just linked, not just linked philosophically, but linked directly with the founders, the
Republican Party,
the fathers of modern communism. And so it's really interesting that the same guy, Greeley, he met with a guy by the name of Alvin Bavay in New York City, and the two of them discussed the forming of a new party. It would be called the Republican Party. And so the organization's meetings by another guy by the name of Bavay were held in Ripon, what we talked about earlier, this town that was run by communists, or the start of these communist communes. And that on March 20th, 1854, was when the Republican Party was then established there. And once the party was formed, Greeley started immediately to promote the new party in his newspaper, which is something that we see here in Utah with this new People's Party, right? It's kind of the same idea of you have the Republicans, not the Republicans, but you've got the Constitution Party and the Independent American Party. They've been around forever. They've got big-time names like, Scott Bradley, but the newspapers ignore them. They've been around for years, but all of a sudden this new party comes up, and the newspapers use all of their power to be able to promote them, and, surprise, surprise, they're higher in the polls than the other parties that have been there longer. So that same strategy was used back then to promote this new Republican Party. And so it's really interesting now we move forward to the 20th century when liberal Republicans who organized to fight the constitutionalists within the party themselves were from this Ripon society. Again, going back to the foundations of the Republican Party, in the 1850s, the leaders of the Republican Party, one of them was a guy by the name of James Blaine, who was
James Blaine. He's a significant character in Utah's history.
Utah history and Republican Party history. He was at one time, he was the Secretary of State of the United States, one of the founders of the Republican Party, and also a member of the Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian
wow.
So
the founding of the Republican Party is littered with these references to Jacobins, Marxism, and the Bohemian Grove.
Yep. And also a guy by the name of Alfonso Taft, who was the co-founder of the Order of Skull and Bones.
Well, there's just no question about who was it the elites that owned this party in the beginning, or was it the grassroots?
Right.
There is no question.
No question. It's undisputable. The current people that call themselves the Utah Illuminati are the legitimate heirs of the Republican Party.
So the Utah Illuminati or the Buckshot Caucus, they don't need to take the party back. It's been there since the beginning.
Forever. Right.
The grassroots are the ones that are trying to actually take control. They're trying to just take the party.
Right. And so even like you go back to the 1960s when you've got what's his name, Barry Goldwater running for it. The communists actually bragged about it. One of Barry Goldwater's speechwriters was a member of Students for a Democratic Society, which is a radical communist organization, which still exists today. They've got clubs at the University of Utah. And so we've got these people like, Buckley, who's also a member of the Skull and Bones, who was a major, staunch promoter of the Republican Party during the 60s and whatnot, that people say, oh, we need to return to Buckley. Well, yeah, returning to Buckley would be a continuation of this Illuminati, communist, Skull and Bones society running the Republican Party. And so people think, there's that video out there that's very popular by Dinesh D'Souza exposing the origins of the Democrat Party. Well, you know what? The Republican Party has just as radical, if not more radical, origins as the Democrat Party.
Right. Just a different flavor of radical.
Right. All of them relating back to, again.
And this is important because it's important to face facts on what we're dealing with.
Right. Yeah.
Know what we're dealing with, and then we can make real decisions on how do you move forward in doing the right thing.
Because, you go to a third party, just recognizing where you come from makes you be able to make an informed decision. So, like in a state like Utah, the power brokers are going to go to the state where most people vote,
which is the Republican
Party. And so that's why the forces of evil gravitate towards the Republican Party, because that's who's going to get elected. So, people that think that they'll all just join a non-satanic party and we'll be able to try and get somebody elected. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, the masses in general are still stuck in there. The Democrats are evil because they support murdering babies and taxing me to death, which is true. And so the only viable solution is the Republican Party, and so they're going to try and do that. And so,
even though the Republican Party actually does those same
exact things, but they don't know
talk about it.
And so it's important that we understand these origins and who these people are, because we keep on over and over and over again thinking that these good guys are helping, but for the Count My Vote battle, getting rid of the caucus system. The Count My Vote people formed the anti-Count My Vote movement. And so the good grassroots people were fooled again, over and over and over again. And so we've got to stop. We've got to understand who these people are, and so we are stop being fooled. And so we can, if you want to try and take over the Republican Party, then that's what you need to do is not be fooled by those people. Or if you want to join a third party, then at least you understand where you're coming from.
We're not advocating one way or another. We're just stating the situation.
Right, exactly.
This Defending Utah presentation was brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, when you care enough to pay the very least. AndersonAccounting.com. Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470. Higher Calling Firearms, HigherCallingFirearms.com. Mini Zoo comes to you, 801-414-5279. American Appliance at AmericanApplianceHVAC.com. And The Editor Lady, TheEditorLady@gmail.com. Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151. And the Law Office of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570. Make sure and subscribe to Defending Utah Radio on iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and YouTube.